Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Priya. In today's webinar, I have my colleague and very delighted to have him on this call to give you a presentation and tell you about one of the new guidelines that was released by COFEPRIS in Mexico. For those of you who may not be familiar with RegDesk, we are a RIM platform with built-in regulatory intelligence. It allows RA teams to prepare, you can manage, publish global submissions within hours. It's quite amazing how fast you can prepare your global files. You can also obtain daily updates and keep apprised of what's changing around the world. I know we address some of these changes via these webinars, but it's best if you have access to alerts on a daily basis, as we cannot cover every alert. And you can also, through the platform, collaborate with your distributors. You can track registrations. That way you never miss out on that renewal. You can manage standards, also perform gap assessments all through one system. It's a powerful tool. If you'd like to learn more or have any specific questions or want to address some of your business needs, we'd be happy to schedule a call to discuss further. In fact, we've had several people from the last couple of webinars reach out and schedule meetings. Before we begin our discussion this morning, I'd like to turn our attention to our attendees. Thank you again for joining us. At the end of this meeting, we will hold a brief Q&A. We encourage your participation. You can refer to the chat button on the bottom of your screen. In the interest of time, you can submit your questions throughout the course of our talk, and we'll try our very best to address every single question. In case we run out of time, please do email your questions via email, and we'll address it that way. We'd love to get your feedback on today's webinar, as well as any ideas you may have for future topics. And we do take those into consideration. Therefore, we'd love to hear from you. Once again, thank you. And Alicio, I'd like to let you take over now.
Hi, Priya. Of course, thank you for that introduction and for letting me be part of this webinar that I'm sure is going to be for the interest of all our attendees. And thank you all for attending this webinar. We'll try to address all your questions during this presentation. So let's start with it. Let me share my screen so you can see the presentation we have prepared for you. I don't know if now you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So this webinar is intended to review the new guideline for registering of medical devices issued by the COFEPRIS. So we're going to address this content, the aim of the document, a brief introduction about COFEPRIS and what it does, the legal framework which is document is based on, the definition of medical devices, a summary of the process of obtaining health registration for medical devices and IVDs. We're gonna compare the different requirement checklist or that this document now is compiling. Also, we have to talk about the software as a standalone medical device now that it has been accepted as a standalone device. We have to talk about some important notes regarding the software as medical device. We also have to address some consideration regardless the class of your medical device. And finally, we are going to summarize all the presentation in a few takeaways so you can understand the aim of the document and further points of interest for you. So this document aims to guide any natural or legal person who promotes any application procedures for health registration of medical devices and IVDs, and also to establish the essential requirements that all the classes of medical devices and IVDs must meet, and facilitate the dossier compilation to obtain the health registration you're intended to apply for. So COFEPRIS is the decentralized and autonomous body of the Secretariat of Health, which grants these authorizations so manufacturers either there are national or foreign, can put their products on sale in the Mexican territory. The legal framework, which is based this document, is the General Law of Health, the Federal Law of Administrative Procedure, the Regulation of Health Products, the official Mexican standards related to medical devices, and when there's no any NOM regarding these kind of products, we also can base our regulation on the ISO and IEC standards. And finally, we have the supplement for medical devices in the latest version, which is the 5.0 from the Mexican Pharmacopoeia. So let's take a quick view to the definition of medical device. We can see that this definition is very similar to the one from the MDR, which states that a medical device is the instrument, apparatus, utensil, machine, software, implantable product or material, diagnostic region, etc., that can be used for the diagnosis, the replacement, modification, or support of the anatomy or any physiological process, the life support, controlled conception, disinfection of other medical devices, provision of information through an in vitro examination of samples taken from the human body for diagnostic purposes. And we can see that incorporates also the devices used for in vitro fertilization and assisted reproduction. Under the primary purpose is use is not through any pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic mechanisms. However, they can be assisted by these means to achieve their function. So what is the process of obtaining the health registration according to this regulation in Mexico? First of all, you have to determine if your medical device requires a registration, because it may be the case that your product doesn't apply for this kind of authorization, since these products are not classified as medical supplies. But if your product applies for this registration, you have to identify the category of use of your medical device, which can be in some of these 7 categories, which are the medical equipment, prostheses, orthoses, any other functional aids, diagnostic reagents, supplies for dental use, surgical and curative materials, hygiene products, and now accepted the software as medical device as a standalone device. So these are the 7 categories we are going to review. And also you have to classify your medical device according to the health risks into class 1, 2, or 3. So you can consult the corresponding checklist according to this classification for your device compilation, for your dossier compilation. So we can see here a table in which we can compare the requirements for the different classes of medical device and the software as a standalone medical device. As we see, the administrative and legal information, it's the same for all the classes and the software, but we have a slightly difference for the technical and scientific information regarding the class 1, 2, and 3. Class 2 and 3, in addition to the information you have to submit for your application, you also have to add biocompatibility and clinical studies tests. It will depend on the classification of your device, the information you have to submit in these 2 requirements. And also, we can see that there are some specific requirements for software as medical device, which are the clinical evaluation, the software lifecycle, certificate of analysis, the cybersecurity report and the risk management report that we are going to address in a deeper manner in the following slides. So regarding the analytical and technical validation, we can see that is the information that demonstrates if the software correctly processes the input data to generate precise, reliable, and exact results. And in order to comply with this requirement, the tests performed to validate and verify the design, the functionality, and the performance of the software during its whole life cycle should be submitted. And also we have to include the different references that have been consulted to comply with this requirement. Regarding the clinical validation, it's the information whether the output supply the output data supplied by the software medical device complies with the intended use. And to fulfill this requirement, it should be submitted any of the following points, which are the full report of the clinical studies to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of the software with conclusive results, the critic revision report of clinical evidence detailing the most relevant aspects of methodology, discuss results and conclusions, or the critic revision report, which states the benefits to health of using the software, as well as the experiences of professional experts pointing at the main consulting results. So here it's important to take in mind that it's not necessary to attach the three of these requirements. So you can fulfill this specific clinical validation with one of these documents. But in case you want or you have all the information, it's recommended to attach all the information you can have regarding the clinical evaluation of your software. Talking about the life cycle of the software, we can see that it's the summary which identifies the different stages performed by the software during its whole life cycle. And it has to establish the requirements, the design specifications, the development, validation and verification tests, the maintenance of the software, which can mean that all the updates or version of the software during its whole life, the intended use, and the commissioning or disposal of the software once the life cycle of the software has ended. Regarding the cybersecurity report, it's the document that summarizes which and should indicate the following requirements, which are the control measurements regarding cybersecurity, the known and foreseeable vulnerabilities, information surveillance process of the software's medical device, the evidence of the security controls affecting the effectiveness verification with the test methods, description, the results, and conclusions. About the risk management report, we can see that is the summary which specifies any foreseeable risk and potential fails during the software lifecycle. And it has to states the identification of the potential risks, the risk evaluation associated with the use of the software, the controls to reduce risks to acceptable levels, and the effectiveness evaluation of risk mitigation measures, as well as the safety and security aspects of the software. So some important notes about the software as medical device, it's that in the case that the software as a medical device requires the use of a sensor or transducer, necessary to measure any physiological parameters, and considering that this sensor or transducer is for the exclusive use of the softwares, uh, it must also comply with some specifically requirements that can be related to the other classes of medical devices, which we can see are the device description, the raw materials using for the manufacturing of that device, the compatibility between the sensor transducer with the software, the manufacturing process, the certificate of analysis of that specific device, I mean the sensor or the transducer, the sterilization process when applicable, packaging information, the stability studies in case that this device states a expiry date, and the biocompatibility test, see if this device will be in contact with the patient, or it is going to be introduced into the body, or is in contact with some body fluids. And also it's important to take in mind that if the software corresponds to a mobile application installed, for example, on a smartwatch, it must present electrical safety tests according to the IEC 62368-1, which is the safety requirements part 1. And this certificate has to be endorsed by the person responsible for these issues. Some general considerations are related with all the classes of medical devices and IVDs are that this document is only a guide for requesting health registration, and do not exempt from compliance with the applicable regulations or the legal framework that we reviewed in the previous slides. So it's important to, in addition to consult this document, also consult all the legal framework regarding the regulation of medical devices, so you can compile all the information required for your application. It is also essential to submit letters issued by the manufacturer and endorsed by the technical manager that clarify some discrepancies that may appear in your dossier, which are, for example, the trade name versus the design name. We can see that some manufacturers sometimes identify their devices during the manufacturing process with a specific name for internal control. So once that the device is ready to be launched to the market, they name it with a trade name, and that discrepancy should be clarified with a letter that establishes the reasons the device has certain names during the manufacturing process and the final release to the market. Also, it's important to clarify all the parties that will be involved during the manufacturing process, whether there are different manufacturers or different sites where the medical device will be manufactured, and also the commercial relationship that may be between the different parties involved in all the, let's say, supply chain of the product. So this kind of clarifications has to be explained uh, by these clarifying letters. And also, if there are any differences or there's the need to explain some discrepancies in the technical information attached to the application, it's also important to clarify them by these letters. We also have to take in account that all the applications must be submitted in Spanish or English. So otherwise, you will be asking for attach the translation into Spanish, and this translation has to be made by expert translators in case of the legal documents, which can be the GMP certificate, the free sale certificate, the authorization or power of attorney letters that has to be translated by an expert translator. And if it's the case that the technical information is the only information that has to be translated, it's sufficient with a simple translation. But both of these translations has to be endorsed by the signature of the technical manager in all your documentation translated. It is also advisable to at least submit the medical device monograph with the translation into Spanish to avoid any inconveniences or misunderstanding by the person who is reviewing your application. So it can be the case that the final document, the official health registration, may have some mistakes in the information. So this document, this monograph, it's very important to at least be attached with this translation into Spanish to avoid these inconveniences. And if you are referring some legal document from previous application, it is important to consider that this document has to be no older than 12 months from the last application and still be valid for this new application, because it could be the case that you don't have the original document, or you don't have any certified copy of that document, and you need to refer that document from previous application. So this consideration is very important at the moment you are applying for the health registration of any class of medical device. And also, it is recommended to attach the draft of the health registration document in an editable Word format. Just the way that you need to obtain the official health registration. This draft has the same format and structure of the final official health registration. So it's important to attach this document to the application, so the person who is reviewing the request knows the information you require to to have in the final official document. So this document is very helpful in the moment of reviewing any application. So finally, we have here the key takeaways regarding the request of medical devices registration. So first of all, we have to identify the category and risk of your medical device. So you can select the corresponding requirements checklist based on the class of your medical device. And consider that the information should be attached in Spanish or English, so there's no need to translate any document. And also understand that what are the requirements for the software as medical device according to the intended list. So now the software is accepted as a standalone medical device. There is a specific checklist for these kind of products. And it's important to mention that in this document, you can consult all the requirement checklist according to the class of your medical device. So back in the day, the checklist of the medical devices were single documents, specific documents for each of the classes. But now in this document, COFEPRIS has compiled all the raised requirements checklist for all the classes, and now the medical device as a standalone, the software as a standalone medical device. So for further information regarding this document, you can go to this link and review this new guide issued by COFEPRIS. And I'm sure that all the information we address in this presentation is very clear and for your interest. And Yeah, that being said, that's all from my side, and feel free to share your questions so we can address them in the following minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Alicia. We do have a bunch of questions. I don't know if we can go through all of them. The first one, when will this guideline go into effect?
So this guideline went into effect since this year. It was published in December of last year, but now it's in force from the new 2024.
Understood. And then the question is there any impact to be expected because of the official, with the upcoming elections in Mexico this year? Do you predict, have you heard anything? Do you have any sense of whether there will be extension to the registration times?
No, COFEPRIS hasn't released any information regarding any new timelines or fast tracking ways, but I'm sure that this kind of updates within COFEPRIS are related to the change of the government. So I'm very sure that soon enough, COFEPRIS will announce some changes in the regulation of medical devices.
Understood. This is an interesting question. It says, in case there's a mistake on the certificate, is there a process that you can make corrections to that certificate by the health authorities?
Yes, there is. So if you find any mistake or any information that is not correct according to the application you submitted, you have to ask COFEPRIS for an internal correction. And there is a form that you have to fill out and attach the official document explaining what are the different or the information that needs to be corrected. But you have to do it within the first 15 days after you receive the official document.
Is there any, for COFEPRIS, do they have any plans to digitize the submission process, the procedures? Or do they plan on going to electronic portal of sorts?
Yeah, at the moment for the application of new registrations, there's no plan for digitalize the process, but there are some digital process regarding, for example, change assessments and renewals of medical devices registrations. But there's no any known information about digitalizing new request of registrations.
We have about 2, 3 questions related to the timelines, just in general. How long does a registration usually take from submission to approval?
Yeah, well, that depends on the class of the medical device. So, for example, if your medical device is class 1, the COFEPRIS establishes that the timeline for obtaining the health registration is 15 days. If your medical device is class 2, the timeline is 30 days. And if it's class 3, it should be 35 days. So regarding software, as a standalone medical device should be within these same timelines, depending on the class.
And would you say the classification of medical device, is it more similar to the US-based classification or the EU-based classification?
No, I will say it is more similar to the FDA because MDR has some other classification as 2A, 2B, but I think COFEPRIS is more based on the classification of the FDA.
And would you recommend to submit the application in Spanish instead of English?
No, it's applicable for both languages, but as I mentioned, it's important to at least translate the monograph of your medical device, because in that document is more, it's the most information or technical information about your device, but there's not necessary to translate all the information attached to your application.
And then the question is, can manufacturers leverage prior approvals from whether UFC certificate 510(k) Australia to speed up the registration approval? And I know the answer is yes.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, there's some equivalency ways to ask for the products that have been approved for some of the agencies like FDA, Australia, Japan, that can be asked by equivalence pathway.
And on RegDesk or RegIntel module specifies and it gives you different abbreviated pathways for different countries. It's worthwhile to have access to that because it'll simplify address a lot of these questions that teams have, especially when regs are in different languages. But nonetheless, I know we're over time. I'll go with one more question. And then please, if we haven't addressed your question, feel free to send us an email and we'd be happy to respond to that. There was a list of exempt for low class risk devices. There was an exempt list for registration. Is that still valid?
Yeah, I know that there's two lists actually, and I know that those lists are quite old, but they're still valid and are for the supplies that are not considered as medical devices. One were issued in 2004, and the update of that list was issued in 2011. But they're both are still valid.
I mean, the questions keep coming, but again, if you'd like for us to do a Q&A session, a brief one just for Mexico, let us know. That way we can schedule another quick call and you guys can ask your questions from Elicio, and he can provide his advice as he's based out of Mexico and has years of experience working with COFEPRIS. That being said, once again, thank you so much for attending today. We appreciate your time and your questions. Please email us your questions. We'd love to respond and want to make sure we address every single one of them. And have a great rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you again on our next webinar. Thank you,
Thank you.
Alicio.
Goodbye. Thank you,
Bye.
Priya. Bye.